There are times in our lives when the hours are an unmoving icy morass, and times when they fly past us in a blur. How ironic that the joyous times we would like to hold on to are the most fleeting, while the saddest ones clutch at us, refusing to let go. I had been frozen by fear and anguish ever since I had been dragged to Lanka. Now I was swept upon the wings of heady celebration so rapidly that it made my head spin. It was not all merrymaking though, because I had some important responsibilities. When Ram crowned Vibhishan, I was the one who stood by my husband's side, pouring from a golden kalasha the holy water that would anoint him king. When Ram entrusted Vibhishan with taking care of all his subjects, particularly the wives and children of all who had died in the Great War, I met my husband's eye in approval, for it was I who had requested Ram to make this stipulation. They have no protector other than you, Ram told Vibhishan. Remember, their husbands and fathers, though banded against us, fought bravely for their king and their motherland. Honor them accordingly. Vibhishan joined his palms and bowed cautiously, because he was not yet used to the weight of Ravan's giant crown. I knew he would do what Ram asked, not only because of the reverence he had for Ram, but because Ram and he believed in the same thing: righteousness and the sacred responsibility of kingship. For the sake of these, Ram had been willing to let me throw myself into fire. For the sake of these, Vibhishan had told Ram how to kill his only son Tarni Sen, who would have been too strong to defeat otherwise. They had both wept bitter tears afterwards, but faced with the same choice, they would act in the same way again. The thought filled me with admiration, but admiration laced with anxiety. Such rulers were adored by the citizens they protected, but often their families had to bear the brunt of sacrifice. Vibhishan had begged us over and over to stay in the most luxurious of Ravan's palaces, but Ram refused, stating that he was still bound by the terms of his banishment. I was happy about that. I sensed that the palaces, though I had never stepped in them, would be filled even now with Ravan's furious longings. So, Vibhishan set up a sumptuous silken tent for us in a pleasure garden and spent much of his time there with us, consulting Ram on matters of governance. At one such moment, my husband said to him, "Be sure to take special care of Queen Mandodari. Treat her gently. Among us all, her loss is the hardest, since she has lost both husband and son, as well as all position and power." This too I had urged him to ensure. Though I did not believe she was my mother, I remembered that Mandodari had saved my life and I was grateful. That is my intention, and Sarmas also, Vibhishan said. We have always held our sister in law in the highest esteem. But for her reining him back, Ravan would have wreaked a lot more havoc on the three worlds. But I don't know what to do. She refuses to return to the palace. She is still sitting by Ravan's funeral pyre, which continues to burn for some mysterious reason as strongly now as when his body was placed on it. Sarma tells me that she will still wearing her queenly clothing and the sindoor on her forehead, though she has thrown away her crown because, according to the Shastras, she is not a widow until the cremation fire dies. She refuses to eat or drink or answer any questions. Sarma thinks she is praying. I don't understand any of it. He took off his crown and ran his hand distractedly through his hair, and I saw that he was going to bald. It struck me that, like Bharat, he too had never desired to be king, but fate had decided otherwise. Ram looked distressed. I am afraid I may be partly to blame for that. When Ravan was dying, I went to see him on the battlefield. I wanted to learn statecraft from him as I had heard that he was a great ruler. I was not disappointed. Even with his failing breath, he taught me things that will be of great use when I return to my kingdom. I was overcome by sorrow that such an intelligent and noble being had fallen prey to revenge and lust and thus brought this fate upon himself. Ah, such is the paradoxical power of the mind. When we control it, it is our best friend. But when we allow it to control us, it becomes our worst enemy. As I left him, a woman came up, covered in a thick veil, and bowed, asking for a blessing. From her voice, I could tell that she was distraught, and so I said, May no new sorrows visit you. From the bangles on her wrists, the only part of her body that was visible, I knew she was married. So I added, May you never become a widow. At this, the woman threw back her veil with a bitter laugh, and I saw that she wore a crown. You are Queen Mandodari, I said. Yes, she said, and you are Ram, the great warrior. Her voice dripped sarcasm. Who killed my husband and son both by subterfuge? And now you have given me a blessing that is worthless. Forgive me, mother, I said. I will think of a different and better blessing. But she said, I am no mother of yours. At least for that I thank Providence. And I have no need of further blessings from you, you who have destroyed all that I held dear. Don't think that you can redeem yourself so easily. Now, I will give you something in return, a curse. At your most joyous moment, may your life be turned to ash. May the same heartbreak you have caused me break your heart too. Ram ended. So perhaps I am the one who is responsible for subjecting Mandodari to this eternal torture. A shudder came over me when I heard Ram speak of Mandodari's curse. For wasn't his happiness intertwined with mine? If his heart broke, how could mine remain intact? That night, I lay awake, thinking of Mandodari, doomed to wait tragically by Ravan's funeral pyre, neither wife nor widow, until death claimed her. And then I realized something. For her, it was not a doom, nor was it tragic. She had wanted this fate. For when she went up to Ram in disguise, she must have guessed what he would say. Mandodari had chosen to wait by her husband's fire for the rest of her life. She had done this, giving up all worldly comforts and power because she loved him in spite of everything he had done. This final act was her declaration of this love, of her forgiveness. Other matters too required our intervention. Lord Ram, Vibhishan asked, what should we do with the Rakshasis who guarded Lady Sita? Your monkey soldiers want to slaughter them for the pain they caused to her. They must indeed be punished. Ram started, but I interrupted quickly. They too were only doing their duty, no different from Ravan's armies on the battlefield. There was nothing personal in their mistreatment of me. Please pardon them, Lord, especially Trijata, who often sheltered me from harm. For the rest of my stay in Lanka, I would like her to be my attendant. Ram and Vibhishan stared at me in surprise. The Rakshasa king said, I have heard from Sarma of all the pain you were subjected to, Lady Sita. I can think of no other woman who would forgive her torturers so easily. That is indeed magnanimous. It was not magnanimity, though. I bore the Rakshasis no ill will because I had never loved them and they had never pretended to love me. Forgiveness is more difficult when love is involved. But that was too complicated to articulate and perhaps harder for males to understand. So I said, revenge does not help anyone. Vibhishan nodded, but Ram shook his head. I applaud you, Sita, but justice must prevail even if it is tempered with mercy. Otherwise, the king will be perceived as weak and his kingdom overrun by lawbreakers. The Rakshasis must be whipped 100 times each, except for Trijata, who did indeed protect you as best she could. She may wait upon you while we remain here. However, now that Vibhishan has been crowned and my 14 years of exile are almost at an end, this will be only for a short while. Lakshman had been waiting impatiently. Now he burst out. What of Shurpanaka? Shouldn't there be a special punishment for her in open court, or better yet, in the marketplace for all to see? I would be happy to deliver it myself. She is the one that caused this entire devastation. She is the one that needled Ravan, playing on his sense of honor and his greed. She is really the one who brought ruin upon her people. Vibhishan bowed his head. I agree. That is why I looked for her as soon as I got to Lanka. But she has disappeared. No one knows where she has gone. My hand went involuntarily to my throat. Sometimes in the middle of the night, I awoke in a breathless panic, thinking that someone was choking me. Now I felt a stab of discomfort and anger, I admit it, at the thought that Shurpanaka, who had brought so much suffering to so many, had escaped to wander freely around the world. It was unfair. But a small part of me was also thankful that I didn't have to see her punished further. I still remembered the happy, trusting girl she had been in the forest before Lakshman mutilated her, and I couldn't shake off the thought that if my husband and brother in law had been kinder and more forgiving of her innocent overtures on the day, or if I had protested more quickly and loudly and stopped them from injuring her, all the tragedies that followed could have been averted. Yes, I too had played my part in bringing about this destruction. Over the next days, Ram and I gave many gifts to the monkey soldiers, jewels and armor and rare fruits from Ravan's gardens, and sent them off to their forest homes. All except Hanuman, to whom we were all greatly attached, Ram, Lakshman, and I, each having our reasons, for he had saved us all in different ways. We requested him to accompany us to Ayodhya and be with us for Ram's long deferred coronation. I secretly hoped he would spend the rest of his life with us and planned to do my best to persuade him. I felt a powerful connection with him, perhaps because he called me Ma and followed me around wherever I went. His demeanor, so to say, that had I not known better, I would not have believed what a fearsome warrior he was. I was certain that as long as he remained with us, we would be safe. But why was I worried about our safety? Our enemies were dead and we were returning to Ayodhya in triumph. Surely it was foolish to feel this way. The monkey hosts marched away jubilantly across the ocean bridge, all except Sugriv and his chief commanders who wanted to see us off before they left. Watching the line of monkeys grow smaller and smaller and then disappear, I felt a pang in my heart. This surprised me, for though I was grateful to them, I didn't really know them well. Perhaps it was because a crucial chapter in my life was ending, and in theirs also. I wondered if they felt, mingled with joy, the kind of deflation for the most heroic days of their existence had now ended. I guessed that many among them would spend the rest of their lives retelling tales of this time of glory, a time when they had achieved the impossible, binding the ocean, killing the mightiest Rakshas, feats that even the gods had not managed to accomplish. But some of them had glimpsed this in their eyes, were so greatly changed by their adventure that they had no longer be satisfied with lives of domesticity. What would they do then? And what of me? Once I returned to Ayodhya, would the structured life of queenship, with its myriad duties, its demands that I attended to every detail of palace administration, satisfy me? But I had little time to wonder about all this. Even as the monkeys disappeared, Ram clasped my hands. A sense of urgency radiated from him now that his tasks in Lanka were done. Ayodhya is calling to me, Ram told me. She is weeping for my return. I have to get back as soon as possible and take up my kingship. His passion infected me. Suddenly, I was ready to return and be his helpmate and queen. It was time to put my house in order, to make my own mark on Ayodhya, change a few things, and see my sister, my beloved forsaken Urmila, whom I hadn't allowed myself to think about all this while, For I had been afraid that one more sorrow placed on top of all others I bore would break me. Thanks for listening.